So lead through out of his office, and we're going towards the entrance, and there is a massive pile of people. And when I say pile, I mean pile, like people on top of people, not just like a crowd, like pile.
Hello and welcome to One-Off Travel Stories. I'm your host, Andrew Tawastruna. Here each episode, I chat with someone about one of their favorite travel stories. That one story they've told countless times to friends and family around the dinner table. On this episode, we're joined by Danika Smith. Danika is an author writing to encourage others to fear less, travel more, and live their most authentic life. She's actually got a book that just came out, her debut travel memoir, 1 year and a one-way ticket. Definitely go check it out. I'll link her socials and her website to the episode as well. She's a dancer and teacher. She's done some amazing traveling in her life. In particular, she spent 3 years teaching in Kurdistan, Iraq, which she'll talk a little bit about today because I thought that was amazing, and I thought I would ask more questions than usual about it. But she's also going to tell us her story, which is about her trip to Cairo, Egypt, and specifically about her day visiting the pyramids of Giza during Eid, so kind of a busy time of the year. With that said, let's jump into it. Hey, Danika, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Andrew. It's my pleasure. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you. Really excited to hear your story. Usually I'd like to kick it off asking where people are because, given it's a travel podcast, we get people that call in while they're traveling. Sometimes they're home. Where are you at?
Well, right now I'm in Toronto. I've been back here since June of last year. But plan on leaving soon, going to the States for some book events. And then from there, I'm actually not sure. I might go on some sort of spontaneous trip, but not planned. Not planned yet.
Nice. Those are the best. Those are the best trips. Yeah, I've been following along with your Instagram. Seems like you've been grinding for on the book launch. I know you've had some, I don't know if you've had other travel around it, but you've definitely been doing a bunch of stuff. So yeah, tell me a little bit. I know a little bit about it, but tell the listeners a little bit about it because it's pretty cool.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm actually, my book is launching very soon, next Tuesday, so less than a week away.
Wow.
And the book is basically about 1 year of travel that I spent away mostly in Asia and a small stint for a few months in Europe. But essentially it's about taking risk after I got a rejection from my post-grad plan of choice. I was going to go to veterinarian college. But instead of trying to reapply, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a year away and just take some time away from this sort of rat race environment, or that's how I felt it was. And ended up having like this life-changing journey where I sort of just came to the realization that like I didn't have to follow one set path in life, and sort of gave me the space to find myself again away from exterior expectations and everything that was influenced me back home.
Yeah. A lot of questions. I'll start with the easy one. Is Toronto home for you?
Yeah, you could call it home. But it hasn't really been home like since that trip. The book that I write, it's about a trip I took in 2018. And since then, I haven't been really permanently back here. And as I said, I was back here since June, and I was away in Kurdistan, which is northern Iraq. I was there for 3 years, working on this book a lot too, actually. So it's been a while since this has been more of a home base, but my friends, my family are all here, and I do come back here often to visit.
Right. And before this kind of period you're describing, did you do much traveling before that? Like when did you kind of get into traveling, start to love it? I mean, I know there's different points. People get taken on trips as kids, but then, years later, they appreciate it a lot more. When was it for you?
Yeah, totally. I went on some trips as I was younger too. a few trips to Portugal because I have a lot of family there. My mom's from Lisbon.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until much later, like I took a volunteer trip after I graduated from my bachelor's to South Africa, and I did some volunteering there. And that was sort of the game changer for me. I knew prior to that trip, like in that last year when I was graduating, I had like just this intense like thirst for like adventure. I just so desperately wanted to go somewhere new and have like this experience of life outside of Canada. But after that trip is when I was like, you know what? I think I need to get out more. But after that trip to South Africa, I was there for a few months, and then after that, I did a small trip to Peru
Yeah.
for I think 2 weeks, and then after that was this big trip in 2018 where I was away for the whole year.
Awesome. That's amazing. Well, I mean, yeah, you must be really excited for the upcoming book launch. So, yeah, I mean, best of luck with that. Really, really awesome.
Thank
I've
you.
read so many amazing. Actually, it's how I've found a bunch of the folks that I've interviewed is through their books.
Mm,
You know, it's just such a nice way to I want to say get to know someone, but get to know an experience they've had or something they want to share.
yeah,
So yeah, it's awesome that you're, you know, putting pen to paper and
yeah.
sharing your experience.
Thanks. Do you have a favorite travel book? I'm curious.
One of the first episodes I did was with J.R. Harris. He wrote a book called Way Out There, and he basically has been it's a gentleman who's from New York in his 80s, and he's been doing like solo backpacking, trekking, like really in sort of areas that you just wouldn't think to go to alone, like very
Mhm.
desolate, and a lot of it in Canada, but way up north. So
Yeah.
that one, I kind of read it, and I was one of those after I read it because I grew up doing some tripping where I was like, God, I need to get back into nature. You know, when you read a book and you kind of
Yeah.
realize like, I need to do some of this and it would be good for me. It was one of those. So I get that a
Nice.
lot with the travel books where maybe it's about volunteering or something, and once I read it, it has that sort of a bit more of a lasting impact than just a good story. So yeah,
Nice. Yeah,
um,
I'll have to read that.
yeah, Jr. Yeah, Jr. He was a great episode as well. Great speaker, a lot of fun.
Cool.
But before I sidetrack us too much,
Great.
let's segue into your story. That's what we're here for. I'd love to if you could give me a little bit of background and context. I now have the background of a sort of why you were sort of traveling, because I believe it's during that period of time, correct? This story?
No, actually,
Okay.
this story. So I'll just give some background. Like I was saying earlier, I was away in Kurdistan teaching for several years,
Yeah.
and during one of a holiday that I had off work, I went to Egypt because from Erbil, which is where I was living, to Cairo, it's about like a 2.5 hour flight. It's fairly close. So on one of my weeks off, I was like, yeah, let's go to Egypt. I hadn't been there before. This is my first time there. I've been to Egypt several times since. But yeah, this story is from my first experience there, which was intense. And I definitely, it's funny because I think of Egypt as like a very popular tourist destination for obvious reasons. I think pyramids is what draws most people to go. And that's what my story is based on. But as far as like a traveler, being there is very overwhelming in Cairo because you're just bombarded by constant people trying to sell you things, trying to take advantage of you. It's very intense. So I think as a traveler to go there as like your first trip would be wild. But at this point, I was pretty grounded in the sense that like I was used to traveling by myself for a while, so was able to keep my cool for the most part.
Had you been in, I guess, like I call it like a situation like that? I know I've been in a number of countries where that is just sort of the reality, right? There's way more people, population, and then just folks coming up to you. It's sort of different. Had you done traveling like that prior to your Egypt trip?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I had been to India before, and there's some areas
yeah.
there that are, there was a bit different because I was also like staying with some locals, so I had their sort of like moral support a lot. So it was a bit different, but definitely used to that sort of crowded city chaos, let's say.
Okay, gotcha. And sorry, remind me what year is this
Trip.
Egypt trip? Yeah.
This Egypt trip is from 2022. Yes.
Okay,
Sorry, I had to
awesome.
think about that for a second.
I
22.
know. I feel like I ask people that and catch them off guard. They're like, "Oh yeah, okay, 2022."
Yeah.
Awesome.
Especially because,
Well,
yeah.
yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying because I've been to Egypt like a few times, and
Right.
anytime I came home from my work there in Kurdistan, I often flew through Cairo, so it'd stop over sometimes, and I was like, oh crap, when was I there all that time?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Take us to Egypt. What? Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So on my first trip to Egypt, I was very excited to see many things. Of course, the pyramids in Giza were like top of my list. I mean, I was pretty nervous going in because I knew like it would be super crowded. So what I did when I first arrived, I had a week in Egypt. So over the first few days, I actually booked a nice camping tour in the White Desert. And if anyone is planning on going, I definitely suggest. It's a super cool place, very tranquil. So if you need a break from Cairo, definitely do that. But after that little camping trip, I decided I would do this, spend a day going through the main pyramids that are close to Cairo. So there's a few, one at Dashur, there's Saqqara, and then of course the Giza complex. So I ended up meeting two guys that were actually from Kurdistan as well. They were two Kurdish guys that I met on my flight there. And we sort of organized to do this trip to the pyramids in Cairo together because it was pretty fairly cheap to get like a driver, like rent a car and get some guy to drop you off at all these places, as opposed to, say, taking a transit. By the time you share that cost with a few people, it's really like it's way more convenient and it's very like it's not expensive. It's very cheap.
Yeah, worth
So
it.
we yeah, totally worth it as far as convenience. And then you're not on the crowded transit. So we did that. So with these two guys, and the first few sites went really well. We went to the Bent Pyramid, which was nice. We went inside one of the pyramids there. We went to Saqqara and a few other sites. But the last one in the afternoon, we planned to go to Giza. So kind of making our way closer towards Cairo. Giza's fairly close to the center. But the problem for this whole story was that I was actually there on holiday during Eid. So for those of us that don't know, this is one of the major Muslim holidays, and that's when a lot of people have time off work. So I'm talking local people as well, right?
Yep.
But in any case, in true Egyptian tourist fashion, our driver dropped us off at this weird I don't remember exactly all the different kind of tour things this company had, but the main thing was he was selling like horse-drawn carriages to take you through the Giza complex. And just for reference, have you been there before, Andrew? Or
I actually have not.
Yeah. Okay. So just so you understand and people listening, like the Giza complex is quite big. I mean, I walk a lot and I like walking a lot. So I was down to walk the whole thing and just take my time. But it is quite far. And I know a lot of people, especially in the heat, would prefer to get like a ride somehow, either just driving or getting one of these horse and ponies to take you around. So we end up in this guy's tourist office and he's trying to sell us this horse and carriage. And I think it was like $200 or $300. And I looked at the two guys beside. I was like, man, look at this. I'm looking at my offline maps. I'm like, guys, we can walk around here. We're a few fit individuals. We can handle this, right? I'm not going to do this horse and buggy. It's not even really my thing. Like I generally don't like to do any sort of like horse riding or especially camel riding, which if you go to Giza, you'll be offered 10,000 camels to take you to random places. So I also try not to do those kinds of tours unless I know a lot of background on how people are taking care of the animals as well. So in any case, I'm telling this guy, no, thank you. We don't want your horse and carriage, da, da, da. He tries to sell us on it for like 20 minutes. And finally we're like, you know what? Thank you. But like, we really want to get going to get inside Giza, right? Because we still want to have our day inside there. So then he's like, okay, sure. Let me walk you to the entrance. which was just his shop was sort of like the street behind the Sphinx Gate, which is one of the places you can enter through. Okay. So lead through out of his office, and we're going towards the entrance, and there is a massive pile of people. And when I say pile, I mean pile, like people on top of people, not just like a crowd, like pile.
Like trying to get through the gate?
Trying to get to the ticket booth. So it was kind of like a I want to say fence. That's not what I mean. There were like a barred sort of window where they were selling tickets. And there was also like the metal detector and entrance. Once you have your ticket, you go through there as well. But there was a pile everywhere. Like it was just this massive crowded pile. And the guy who tried to sell us this horse and carriage thing, he's like, have fun getting through that. If you buy my horse and carriage, I can get you in. And the guys were looking at this pile. We're like, oh, crap, what are we gonna do, right? But I'm still like, I guess I'm stubborn, I suppose. But I was like, still, I'm not taking your horse and carriage. It's not worth it. I don't want to do it.
It sounds like he had a great setup, though. He knows all the steps.
Yes, he knew, and I know for a fact. And after coming to Cairo, like later on, it's not always that wild. It was because it was Eid. Everyone was off. Like the crowd of people at the entrance were not predominantly, they were not tourists. They were actually just locals going in there with their picnic baskets to just like have a picnic around the complex. I don't know. I guess it's a thing. So anyways, we're staring at this mound of people, and I got these two guys. Horse and buggy guy kind of leaves. He's like, good luck. And he was all, on his high horse, pun intended. So, and then so we're looking, we stand for a few minutes just staring, thinking, well, how the heck are we going to do this, right? How are we going to get through this pile to get a ticket? Like, it's just not happening. But I was like, well, guys, we just got to start walking through. In other experience of going through crowded places, that's kind of what I found. You just got to try and move through somehow, just keep walking.
Yeah.
And so we do a little bit. We kind of sort of approach through to the pile and kind of find a way that's less intimidating. And then all of a sudden, this really tall Egyptian guy walks up to me. He's like, hey, you need tickets? And I was like, yeah, I do. He's like, I'll get them for you. I was like, okay. So I took a huge leap of faith here. I handed this guy our money and was like, I guess he's going to try and get through. He's a pretty big guy. I figured he can push through better than me. And this man literally climbed over the pile, reached his arm through the top edge of the barred window where the ticket booth was. So just reached his arm through. A minute later, all of a sudden, his arm comes back. He's got the tickets in hand, some change, crawls his way back to us, and he hands me not only the tickets, but all the change, which if you've ever like dealt with someone trying to sell you things in Egypt, that is probably unheard of, that you would actually like have someone not take advantage of your money.
I just figured this was his tall person scheme, like, okay, I can wait here. I'm tall. I can reach up there. Yeah. Take a bit of change. Why not?
I did give him some change. Yeah. Because I really, obviously I was super appreciative. I was like, holy crap. Like he just did that and helped us out. So that was crazy. And I was surprised that happened. I mean, I kind of made it sound like all the Egyptian people are out to get us. That's not what I mean. They're very amazing people, but it just in the crowded tourist sort of sites, it can be a little bit hairy. So anyways, now we have our tickets, but then of course the next problem is getting through the pile to the gate. Like the security gate entrance, there's a metal detector and you kind of have to scan your tickets, whatever. So we're like, oh crap, we got another pile to deal through. But we approached that pile, and that was just a crazy stroke of luck. That the security guard that was at the top, I guess he saw us and some other tourists, and he like parted the seas like Moses. It was insane. Just a few of him and some other guys are just with their arms like shoving people aside and then let us through. I guess he could tell that us tourists are there for one day, and I guess he's trying to let those people in first. I don't know. Didn't ask or to have the moment to ask, but we get through and we start walking around. It's super busy. Turned out that it was very hot. A horse and carriage might have been made our trip a little bit more comfortable. But we managed to see everything.
How hot are we talking?
Oh, I've got like ankle tan lines from that day, like from my jeans. It was crazy.
It's like March, if I remember correctly. Something in that.
I was there in No, I think it might have been like first week of May. So it was
Okay.
already quite hot. It
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
so bad there. Like by the time I went to like Luxor and like Valley of the Kings, that was bloody hot. I don't know, something about the rocks all around really radiated the heat, but it was still very hot. Like we were sweating. And because it's Egypt, like
Yeah,
generally people are wearing long sleeves and such. So I was wearing like a long shirt, long pants, and I was drenched. But I was still like to my guns. I was like, I mean, I guess I could have gotten the horse, but still not worth that much money. We're good. We sorted it out ourselves. So it was kind of like a proud moment in the end that like, yes, we did it.
oh, you made it. You
So
made it.
yeah,
Yeah, I remember. It's got
yeah,
to be like 2022. Egypt had some of the hottest temperatures in the world in the summer anyway, like 45 to
yeah,
50-degree temperatures, really hot. So that's why I
it
was curious.
is. Yeah, but I mean, at that point, I was already sort of used to that because I was living in northern Iraq at the time. I mean, southern Iraq is a different story. That's some crazy, wild, hot temperatures. But even by then, I'd experienced like 45 degrees. So
Mm,
yeah. So I was like okay with it.
yeah. Okay. So you're in. You made it through two
Yeah.
piles of people, and you're in.
Yeah. And then we had our day and it was really great. Like other than, the adventure coming in, we managed and we had an awesome time there. And I actually ended up hanging out with those two guys that hung out with me that day in Giza. We went to Luxor together and like had another driver who was much better than than that guy who tried to con us into the horse and carriage to take us to the Valley of the Kings. So overall, super cool experience. I did have one other sort of weird someone trying to take advantage in where was that? Which one of the temples there? I forget which one in Luxor, but had a guy take my camera out of my hands. That was kind of intense. But that's a separate kind of story. I guess it's a quick one, but that was basically the story of my Giza complex wild adventure getting inside.
What did you appreciate? Again, I haven't really been, so I'm curious to hear like what was your favorite part of it?
Um,
The complex or maybe the pyramids nearby.
yeah, I I just really loved. My favorite part was once you get sort of to the back end, like there's the main entrance, the Sphinx area is pretty crowded. But if you go where usually people go by horse and carriage, you take that long road behind. I think it's the Great Pyramid. I don't know. I would have to look at a map.
Yeah.
But a long road that kind of loops around behind one of the bigger pyramids. Once you get behind there, like we had this moment of like just, it was pretty quiet, which was a miracle because it was so busy. And there was just a moment where there wasn't too much noise, not really people coming by, just a few horses and camels. And it was kind of for me just this vast stillness and realizing that this massive these massive, there's multiple obviously structures just right outside this crazy city. It just was really wild to me that sort of civilization is built up around this amazing ancient structure. So it was that moment for me that was pretty awesome.
Nice. Okay. Well, interesting that you got like a quiet moment in there. I should
Yeah.
ask you, were there a lot of horse-drawn carriages going around after you got in there?
Tons, tons, tons.
Okay,
And
so
like
it's
every
a
2 seconds,
normal thing.
miss, you need camel? Miss, you need camel? You want horse? Camel? Miss? And then you got the people selling the trinkets. Pyramid? Like every 2 seconds. It's like I said, it's you gotta be going in with like a good mindset, I think, that you don't get overwhelmed because you can
Yeah.
easily get overwhelmed, especially if it's a holiday like Eid. It's something to mentally prepare for, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's interesting that people were just going there to kind of hang out. It's like a big open space, I guess, in like a crazy
Oh my
dense
God.
city, so that does make sense.
And I think that's why, right? Like it's kind of like there are some parks and stuff, but as far as like a nice open area, I mean, why wouldn't you? I guess if you can picnic outside the pyramids, why not? Right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
So
right? I mean,
I can understand why
um,
they did. I don't understand the
yeah,
human pile outside the ticket office, but everything else, yeah.
I guess it's just part of the game, part of how it works. They probably
Honestly,
knew going in. Um, I would
yeah.
actually love to hear. I mean, um, I someday I'd love to go to Cairo and check out the pyramids, but I've always
Mhm.
really wanted to go down to Luxor. Would love to hear about that part of a little bit about that part of your trip.
Yeah, Luxor is super cool. And it's good you mentioned that because I've had a few people ask me in the past, like, oh, what's it like going inside the pyramid? Um, and though it is super cool that you're like going down this kind of really tiny tunnel and then there's like an open space once you're in there. But as far as like what's like on the walls and what to see inside the pyramid, there's not much, obviously, because
Mm-hmm.
everything was like looted and taken out ages ago. And there's not like paintings on the walls and stuff like you see in the Valley of the Kings in Luxor. Now, there, when you go to the Valley of the Kings, Queens, etc., like that's when you see a lot of like very cool like carvings, paintings on the wall. Like that is really, really nice to see as far as like going in and seeing something. The pyramids for me is more about like this physical and insanely huge, how the heck did this come to existence kind of structure, whereas
Yeah.
the Luxor is a bit different in that sense, where for people that enjoy like sort of ancient paintings, carvings, etc., like that, that's, I think that's more the appeal to Luxor. And it's a different environment too. I think the other cool thing about it, it's very hidden. So as
Yeah.
opposed to like this massive pyramid in this like sort of flat landscape, you have like I think I don't know how many. Like again, I'd have to look up this exact number. But the guy who drove us around in Luxor was telling us that like they're constantly finding new tombs every year. Like they're just constantly finding new ones. Like so they're scattered within like the mountains there. So if you
Yeah.
look from afar, you might see like a tiny thing that maybe looks like a window, and that is could be like another like entrance to a tomb, which is crazy. There's just hundreds of these things all over the place.
That's really cool.
Mhm.
I've been to a few ancient civilization ruins. I think the favorite of mine was Tikal, which is in Guatemala, and it is kind of like that, where they've just got so much of what was a city still buried. Like they just haven't. Like
Mm.
there's too much, right? They don't have the money to just
Yeah,
uncover it all, but it feels more adventurous somehow, right? Like when you're walking around and kind of imagining a bit.
yeah,
So that's kind of
totally.
the vibe you're giving me anyway.
Yeah, I love imagining. It's true. I would say I'm kind of a bad tourist in that sense that I don't really look up too much in advance in terms of history. But I think that's part of like my writer mentality because I like
Mm,
to imagine things. Like I think of another moment, like when I was in Sri Lanka, there's the ancient city of Anuradhapura, which is phenomenal, by the way, if you're ever there.
yeah.
Definitely worth it, even though it's like a pretty big tourist destination. I'd say like Luxor, it's definitely worth your time. And I just remember like walking around and being like, wow, I wonder like what people wore back then. Like, what were they doing? Were they like hanging out by this like man-made pool? Were they walking around or on like weird bicycle contraptions? I don't know. Like I just love to wonder about what they were eating, talking, doing, and just come up with random stories in my head. Um, Sometimes I'll look up actual factual information later, but I like to wonder. That's one of my favorite things.
It's good to work the imagination, right?
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
so, so when you were wrapping up your Egypt trip, like how do you, when you think back on it, was it good, bad that you were there on Eid? Did you kind of experience what you wanted to experience, see what you wanted to see?
Yeah, I loved it. I definitely like as far as being able to relax and enjoy a bit more, like Luxor was easier. Because on that first
Yeah.
trip, I basically spent it around Cairo, and then I went to Luxor afterwards. Aside from the White
Did
Desert,
did you fly down there?
to Luxor from Cairo.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I took a I took a really long bus.
I was gonna say I
But I
wasn't
would
sure how
suggest
far exactly it was, but yeah.
it's far. You can take an overnight bus for those on a budget. You
Yeah.
can take a bus from Cairo to Luxor overnight. It's pretty hairy. It was surprisingly very windy at times. Kind of felt like I was on that what's the name of that bus in Harry Potter? I forget which one. Or like shrinks and it's like
Yeah,
that crazy.
yeah, yeah. I don't know that I ever really know the name of that bus, but I know
You
exactly
know
what
what I'm
you're
talking
talking about.
about? Yeah,
Yeah,
it felt like that.
yeah.
And maybe that was just a driver at the time. Who knows? But yeah, so I did take an overnight bus, but I do know that there's frequent flights from Cairo to Luxor or like different cities. or like out to like Sharm el Sheikh and like the other peninsula you can head out to as well. So
I've got to ask, how much was the overnight bus?
oh gosh, I don't remember, but if I had to guess, I would probably say I spent like $30.
Yeah,
Maybe less. Maybe
I
less.
remember in Ecuador it was like $1 an hour. That was the going rate on the buses. So I took a
Yeah.
very long South America. You can take
Yeah.
if it's still like this, you can take these super long buses and it's not expensive. So $30
Hmm.
overnight, not bad, not bad.
That's what I'm saying,
if you can get
right?
any sleep,
Uh,
question mark there.
yeah. Exactly. That was the one thing. But whatever. I would say on that first trip, I definitely like saw what I wanted to. I had a really good time despite the craziness getting to Giza. Even Giza itself, like once we were in, it was a lot less stressful and easy. But I will say I did go to Giza a time after that, sort of stopping over before I went to Dahab in Egypt, which is another wonderful place.
Hmm.
But I went to Giza first thing in the morning. It was actually technically before it opened. I think it was must have been like 7 or 7:30 in the morning when we arrived, and it was amazing. There was not a soul. It was nice and cool. So that experience of Giza was much better. So if anyone is planning a trip, if you plan your trip in the future, I would definitely suggest trying to go there earlier than later if you can, just to
Yeah,
see if you avoid that. I mean, that was also not on Eid too, so
yeah.
it's hard to
Watch out for
say.
Eid. Watch out for maybe the summer months if it's boiling hot. Go
Yeah,
early in the morning. Yeah, that makes
exactly.
sense.
That's what I would suggest, but worth it even if you do go on Eid, I would say. Just find yourself a handy, really busky Egyptian guy to get you a ticket.
Yeah, definitely. Well, outside of Egypt, like I'm really curious, and don't have to go into a whole story here, but you were living in Iraq, you said for 3 years. Yeah, I'm just frankly curious. What you said you were working there?
Yeah, so a lot of people ask me how I end up there, which is a fabulous question because it kind of operated like on a coin toss, which is
Mm.
an interesting way to live life. But anyways, I had originally applied to work at an international school. I forgot to mention I used to teach English online. So that was one of
Okay.
the jobs I used to do when I was in Central America. I was doing that and some other jobs online, working remotely. But it came to a point after COVID, I was like, you know what? I want to move somewhere and like work as like, full time at a school, whatever. So I applied
Yeah.
originally to a job in Kenya, and then once I was in touch with HR, they're like, well, actually, sorry, that position is filled, but we've got a job in Baku, Azerbaijan, or in Erbil in Kurdistan, Iraq. And I was like, I did a bit of research and I was just like, all right, well, I'm seeing like a lot of other solo female travelers. I read about some girls that were even hitchhiking around Kurdistan, which I have not done personally.
Yeah.
But I was like, wow, if I mean, if they can do that, I can move there and teach, right? Like, seems safe enough for me. So, because I didn't know anything about the region, it was completely new to me, and I just wanted to see what it would be like. So, basically, was toying between that job in Erbil and another part-time teaching position in Peru. And I flipped a
Okay.
coin, and it landed
So those
on
are
Kurdistan.
very different, far from
But
each other. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, very different and far. But I do think I use that method. A friend of mine sort of convinced me to do it years ago or start doing it. And it kind of helps you like feel like what's your gut response anyways, because if it lands on the option that you didn't really want, you kind of feel that right away.
Mm.
So I did that and I ended up there, taught at the school for a year. And then I actually found a job teaching ballet, which was fantastic because I have
So
a lot of
cool.
background in dancing. And then so once
Yeah.
I found the job teaching ballet, I took a 2 year contract doing that, had an amazing experience doing that. It was the best. And then once that contract finished, I was actually wrapping up and getting my book ready for publishing. So then I decided to come back here to Toronto, spend time with friends and family as I market and launch this book. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah. That's amazing. Teaching ballet, was it like at a school?
When I was teaching ballet, I was working for like a extracurricular kind of center. So they had after school programs. They had dance, they had gymnastics, music, visual arts. So it was kind of like activity center, I guess you could say. I was also teaching Pilates there as well for like women. But teaching dance there is an interesting thing to do. There's not many ballet teachers there, as you might guess. Um, but it honestly, like, it was a very relaxed life there. Like, I could not really complain. People ask me a lot of crazy things like, oh, did you have to cover up? Like, was it really hard, like, being a dance teacher? And honestly, no. Like, I felt super comfortable. Like, I have not really had any bad experience there, other than living through the
That's
earthquake.
great.
That's a separate thing. But aside from earthquake,
Right. That
amazing.
was right along the northern border, I guess, right around there. I guess
Yeah, I
maybe a bit
mean,
more towards Syria, but yeah.
yeah. So Turkey and Syria got hit very badly, obviously, which was in the news. But we kind of had like a bunch of like milder shocks. But at the
Yeah.
time, I was staying in an apartment building, a nice. I missed that apartment, but I moved out of it because I was so freaked out afterwards. But basically, if you were on ground level, you wouldn't have really felt it in Erbil. But if you were like in a condo or something on a higher level, like we woke up in the middle of the night and my floor was moving. It was like I was like on a surfboard on water, and it
Oh gosh.
freaked
Yeah.
me out because I was on the fifth floor and I had that building was I think 13 or 14 floors, and
Yeah.
I was like, if this thing goes down, I don't know. It was too much for me. So I
No,
had to move out
I'm with you.
eventually.
Yeah. Unless they're designed for it, it's definitely
Hmm.
nerve-wracking to say the least.
Totally.
Is it I don't know how far north we were. Is it sort of mountainous, hilly up there?
So Erbil is kind of like in this flat zone, but outside of the
Okay.
city, like if you drive 20 minutes, you're already kind of in the mountains. So like
Oh, that's so
southern
nice.
Iraq is pretty flat.
Yeah.
But Kurdistan region, northern region between basically you're kind of squished in between Turkey, Iran, Syria, and it's all mountains. It's really,
Yeah.
really nice. In fact, like I used to love when I could, like outside of work, going on hiking groups to go into mountains. Like one of the best things to do on the weekend for me because it's just so nice.
You should move to
And it,
Seattle, where I'm from. That's like that's like everyone's jam. So yeah.
yeah, and actually, you know what? I always get upset when people are like, "Oh, you're from Toronto. What a nice city." I was like, honestly, I'd rather live in Vancouver if I could
Well,
be
I
nicer.
joke about this because I'm from Toronto,
Yeah.
and in all of the years I lived there, not a single person ever asked me to go on a hike. And probably like
What?
week one in Seattle, it's like, oh, you want to go for a hike? Yeah, like it's
Oh,
not a
no
thing in
way.
Toronto that I know of anyway.
No, no, not in Toronto, but in Vancouver for sure. I think a
Yeah,
lot of people are like camping people. My one of my best friends, she moved out to Vancouver years ago, and she's like, "Oh, I love my life here. I'm going on camping trips all the time, hiking, this and that." I was like, "Ah, jealous." But maybe I'll get
one
out there
day.
at some point.
Well, at least you had access while you were living in Iraq. It's kind of funny,
Totally,
so far away,
totally.
but honestly, it sounds really really beautiful. Almost, sort of a relaxing few years for you teaching ballet. That's really cool.
Yeah, it actually worked out really well once I started teaching ballet. Like when I worked at the school, like it was very taxing mentally. I was teaching kindergarten at the time. And
Yeah,
I usually describe teaching kindergarten. It's awesome. Like I loved my students. I still think about those kids all the time. They're just the sweetest. But when you have 20 something of them, and it's like you and like one other TA, like I came home most days and felt like I'd been like run over by a truck
I can't even
physically,
imagine. Yeah.
mentally. Like it was just, I was like, my neighbor here is a kindergarten teacher and she's been doing it for like, I think 20 something years. And I don't know how.
I
It's beyond me.
I didn't
But
ask, but do you speak any of the local languages?
yeah, that's an interesting question. So in Kurdistan, there's like many languages, but the two main ones would be Kurdish, but it depends
Hmm.
on which region in Kurdistan you're in because there's different dialects. So there's that, and then Arabic. obviously is another common language spoken because you got a lot of people from the south and other expats. There's tons of expats from Syria and Lebanon, etc. So there's a lot of Arab speaking people, and then English. So for me, and if there's even more languages than that, like for me, I guess I remember more Arabic than anything, and I think that's more about like the people I hung out with. Were mostly people from Baghdad in the south. My ex-boyfriend at the time, like he's actually his like mother tongue is not even any of those languages. So he's Assyrian, which is like a separate sort of small sect of people from that area. And so he spoke, when I was with him and his family, like they were speaking 2 other different languages that like, so it was crazy. Like the number of languages that are spoken in that region is actually kind of insane. So it was very hard to just like focus in and learn one, but definitely I remember more Arabic phrases than anything.
Gotcha. Wow.
But I don't know much. Don't test me. Yeah.
No, it's okay. I mean, what an adventure. And yeah, like, I guess that's how it works when you're in a region with a lot of languages. Everyone just picks up what they need to know along the way. You've got your home tongue, obviously, but I know I've read lots of things around India as being very similar with all of the different languages and dialects. So that's really interesting. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story. Thanks for so much in sharing a little bit of your time in Iraq too, because it's just a great story. And I mean, I'm looking forward to checking out your book now. That's really great. Good luck with that. And I guess thanks for coming on.
Yeah. And just as a tidbit, my next book that I've started, but need to work on it more, is going to be about living and working in Kurdistan. So if you're interested in that will come out at some point.
Okay. Are you're working on that, or
is it work in progress? It's a work in progress. So I got a few scenes laid out and written, but like been so busy with this book that I haven't been able to put out that much time towards that right now.
That makes sense. Focus on this one. Get that one done.
One thing at a time.
Yeah, exactly. One thing at a time.
Exactly.
Well, again, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun sharing the stories.
A big thank you to Danika for coming on the podcast today and sharing one of her stories, and also just sharing about some of her other experiences, which were fascinating, experiences where she took a little bit of risk and really learned some amazing things along the way. Don't forget to go check out her debut travel memoir, 1 Year and a One-Way Ticket. Her website, you can find her at Danika Duarte Smith. I'll also link that to the episode. And as always, if you've got a great story to tell, you can find me at oneofftravelstories.com.